So like many games I check out, No Man's Sky or Destiny, Diablo 4 is also one of them which is nowhere near the same game it was at launch at all. When it first came out back in 2023, I remember seeing bits of it online, and from what I saw it did look crazy in terms of like visuals and combat, but nothing I'd see myself jumping into. And from what I've heard, for a lot of players the game was sort of stuck in this awkward phase where it wasn't hardcore enough for like the proper veterans, but also didn't hook casual players as such. So what I'm saying is that it was very mixed in terms of the player base. However, after like 12 seasons and a ton of updates, it's pretty much a different version of itself. Many systems have been changed and reworked, new content added constantly, and it definitely has become a more solid game overall, which was exactly why I'm now checking it out, as well as this season. It ends in about 20 days time, so just in time for the new one, where I'm sure returning players will come back and new ones. It knows it's not trying to be something else, it's not even that complex really. It's just a fun but also very cinematic action RPG that you can jump into. A big issue for lots of players originally was probably the monetization stuff and like the microtransactions. Even back then it was a bit rough for a full price game. Some little cosmetic packs were so much to buy, and I mean that part hasn't really gone away from what I saw. They're very much still a part of the game, maybe even more obvious now with all the seasonal stuff and crossovers they've done. Of course, for a new player it probably isn't an issue as you're not looking into the store, at least right away, but there's so many skins that are just so overpriced. But I thought I'd just mention it, and this is going to be more of a beginner and single player review, which is good for people that are looking to play it for the first time. But the main focus is obviously the actual game underneath, which has improved a lot. It's much more polished in the sense that it's way more casual friendly than it used to be. You aren't obliterated for experimenting around with stuff, or you don't, have to know exactly what to do just to survive early on. You just kind of play and see how it goes. At least for me it was like that, whereas apparently it was way different before. You basically pick a class out of the 5 available base game ones: Barbarian, Druid, Necromancer, Rogue and Sorcerer. And then you've got the 2 main DLCs as well. So there's Vessel of Hatred, and that added Spiritborn, whilst Lord of Hatred added Paladin and Warlock. I chose Necromancer. I heard it was quite a popular one and quite fun, although there's clearly not a correct choice, it all depends on playstyle. You then start leveling up as you go on with the skill tree, which is quite involved in terms of how many branches there are and smaller upgrades, and small upgrades that are within a big upgrade. And there's still a good amount of stuff within like the first hour, which are quite varied and pretty cool. Playing with Necromancer was instantly fun, to be honest, and not only when it's upgraded or anything. You gain abilities fairly quickly, and that's probably because it doesn't slowly build up. There's tons of enemies you kill straight away, and it never really feels like you're waiting in that slow early game phase for that long. And the slower parts were still interesting and quite chill. And I think the best part is that you can just mess around with builds without it feeling like you've ruined your game or your character. If something doesn't work out, you just switch and try something else. It's not overly stressful, it's just experimenting with what is there. But for me, the combat is probably the strongest part of the game. It just feels good. You're constantly pulling enemies and exploding them, and of course loot dropping everywhere. Visually it looks great no matter what you're doing, with a bunch of effects all over the place, and at times the campaign almost feels a bit too easy, but I think that's intentional. It's definitely designed so you already feel powerful from the start, instead of having to, go through a bunch of story content. And that leads into how the whole game is structured, because the campaign isn't really like the main game as such, it's more of like a really long intro. Once you finish it, the actual main story, that's when the actual systems open up fully. There's stuff like dungeons and seasonal stuff I mentioned, so not just cosmetics. You can increase the difficulty further, and then the proper end game grind, which I haven't got to be honest. And this, as I said, is more of a new player review, but I'm sure that's where the actual challenge does start. The side quests are fine, I mean nothing crazy, most of them are just for quick XP or you going to a place, killing something and then coming back. I just did a few of them because I happened to be in that area, rather than because they were actually good and I wanted to do them. The same with dungeons, especially early on. And of course there are fun ones, whereas some are just sort of filler. But again, it's just more to do for leveling. But the actual core loop is still solid. As you can imagine, it's just killing enemies, grabbing all their loot and repeating. And that loop works great if you like that sort of thing. And it seems like most do, because that's basically the reason why the franchise exists. Loot progression is a big part as well, because it's not all the time when you're going to find crazy drops. You can go quite a while until you actually get something good, you know? It makes a difference for sure. But even with the smaller upgrades, they still offer something fun and new to always switch it up. It also depends on your difficulty. I would never play a game like this if it was super hard. And early on, I mean, it's fine. You can just drain enemies quickly. Even with some of the bosses as well, as long as you're the same, or at least a very similar level, they don't last too long or get that frustrating, at least for me. It's a lot of fun mainly, unless you're really into late game. I'm sure there's a bit more paying attention then and figuring out the exact best thing to do to actually go about a fight. So it does please both types of players, I'd say, more so than it did. It's not fully hardcore, it's way more relaxed. And like I said, it's meant to be something you can just jump into and play for a bit and still make progress. And I'm sure for some players who have come off other games similar, they may even find it too easy early on and just going through it without even thinking. So I suppose it would be nice if there was a bit of a challenge as you start. It really depends on the player. But I mean, I get why they did it. It's cool how it's accessible to lots of players now. I was quite surprised, as I said, as I went in kind of blind. So it's great in that sense, and anyone can make progress in quick sessions. I wouldn't say it's a massive grind unless you really want to rush into the end game. And the systems aren't too overwhelming or anything, like how Destiny felt for me. And you can customize quite a bit in terms of like your loadout and your build, but you're still locked into your class, so you're not doing crazy stuff like in other games similar. Everything still kind of fits within its lane. Some people will enjoy that structure, others will want a bit more chaos, but it fits the direction they've clearly chosen. So playing this game for the first time without knowing too much until I thought about doing this video. It's a solid blend of content. It looks amazing and very cinematic, but still being quite casual friendly. The combat is by far the best bit, as I said, which is always changing, as I mentioned, and quite satisfying in terms of just becoming stronger as you go through and loot up. And from what I heard, it's way better than what it was, so even for people that played it already, then maybe it's time to give it another shot. Hopefully this video has been helpful to new and returning players, and you now know if it's worth your time from what I've said. And that's where I end my review of Diablo 4 in 2026. If you did enjoy this video, let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you like single player and multiplayer games as well, then that's what this channel does focus on. I have many playlists on a selection of games, so you can subscribe to the channel if you'd like to. If you want to support me any further, you can become a member of the channel at either level 1 or 2 to gain access to various perks. Thank you all for the support and watching until the very end, and bye bye.